Hello and welcome to a week 9 edition of the Kama Sutra Show. We will be going position by position tonight through all the viable plays on the main slate. As always, I am joined by Evan Walters himself. I am joined by soon-to-be double father, Andrew Wiggins. Andrew, you're on call as we speak. What's going on?
Yeah, I got to make sure I don't put out too much action because I feel like for sure the baby will come Sunday morning, right as I need to sit down and finish my lineups.
What if it comes during this show? Are you going to go to the hospital as yourself, Joe Dirt, and leave me and Evan here to finish, or what's going to happen?
Indeed, that will be exactly how it plays out.
Evan, what's going on tonight, buddy?
What's up, man? Really excited for the week. It's a motherfucking John Mackey Award week, and we will hit that hard once we get to the tight ends. The motherfucking Mackey Award model is just popping hard, and I can't wait to dive in.
Yeah, it is, I think, a good slate. We don't have any injuries that have completely cratered. At least DraftKings did a good job pricing Chase Edmonds. We'll talk about how he fits on FanDuel, where he's much, much cheaper. But anyways, let's get into it here, boys. At the quarterback position, I think we need to start with the Seattle-Buffalo game because the weather report in Buffalo is pristine. I mean, we're talking 65 and sunny in Buffalo in the middle of November. Perfect for two teams who have thrown at way above expectation rate. Now, Josh Allen has struggled, and struggled badly over the last month. And that brings into question, well, Josh Allen is 7K. Deshaun Watson is 7,100. Lamar Jackson is 6,900. And you start getting to these spots with Josh Allen where if he was playing like he was in the first month, it'd be no question. It'd be Josh Allen. Now, I think there's more questions. Evan, do you think that the Seattle defense is the chicken noodle soup for Josh Allen to get right on Sunday?
Lean yes. And I also think, and I'm looking at just to make sure on John Brown, full practice the last 2 days. And Josh Allen's downturn is kind of correlated with John Brown being significantly at less than 100% and or being out entirely. Now it looks like after 2 full practices on Thursday and Friday, he should be, I think he's not even on the injury report anymore.
Correct.
So that's really good news. Also, the Seahawks are going to be without their top corner, Shaq Griffin. And that makes them a lot weaker. They are going to have Jamal Adams back, but they are, they're not as strong in the secondary without their best cornerback, obviously. So I think that this game is going to be high scoring as is projected according to the total. The total is at 54.5, which is that the highest total on the slate? Yeah, it is actually by a reasonable margin. So I absolutely like this game. I think it's a game. It has game stack possibilities with, Tyler Lockett, who I'm sure we'll get to, and even John Brown, who I think is cheap, and Diggs, I think is going to be popular. I just like the game in general. I like both quarterbacks, obviously.
Yeah, I think every dollar on this slate is going to go a pretty long way, Wiggins. So when you start saving money off of Russ, off of Mahomes, down to this Josh Allen tier, it means something. The question is going to be, there's 3 guys there, at least to me: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, all separated by just $200. And I Deshaun, if you're a game log watcher, Deshaun Watson is going to look a lot safer, and he's facing the dead last DVOA pass defense in the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's thin down there, man. I think I lean Watson over Allen now, but I hate to say bad things about my boy Josh Allen in this spot. What are you thinking about optimal quarterback strat?
I think I slightly prefer Watson to Josh Allen. He is more expensive. So if you need that money, it's $100 on both sites. If that $100 does something for you that you like, I'm all for it. Absolutely no problem dropping down to Josh Allen. I think you can make a case that he's better than Watson. I mean, maybe Houston runs the ball more. Obviously they can do plenty on the ground in this matchup. Josh Allen could get into a shootout. So, if that's what you believe, by all means play Josh Allen. And I think Russ is right there too. I mean, like you said, the money is tight, but depending on how some things break, maybe Zeke ends up sitting out and that opens up a little bit. We're actually projecting Zeke out right now. And we'll talk more about that. I think it's, probably like 60% he sits, and we just wanted to get the projection up there so you guys could see it, but that would open things up. And then maybe you can get up to Russ. I think Russ would be the preferred play of the bunch just because he's so freaking good. But all 3 of them are great plays. And I'd say Lamar is a slight cut below, but he's going to have way less ownership than the rest of them. So that's the guy, we keep hitting him in tournaments and he hasn't gotten there for us really. But I'm going to continue to play him in tournaments.
Few more key injuries I wanted to mention in that game are, in addition to the Seahawks being without their top corner, Shaquille Griffin, they're also going to be without their slot cornerback, Ugo Amadi. And the Bills, and we know that Matt Milano, one of the most athletic weak side linebackers in football, he's going to be out on Buffalo's side. So that just, I think, enhances the chances of the game environment translating to a shootout scenario.
Well, that's the thing for Deshaun Watson. Jake Luton will be starting for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the odds of that game turning into a shootout with Luton starting, Evan and I talked about him on the team by team pod, I think are way, way, way less than if we get a good Josh Allen game. This game could go absolutely nuclear. Obviously, we don't need to spend much time on Russ. He scored at least 25 DraftKings points in every single game this year. I want, though, to ask Evan about Lamar Jackson because, we've talked about turnovers. We've talked about slightly less rushing volume. We've talked about just misses in the long pass game. And this matchup is not good. I mean, it's just, especially with both their tackles out. I was kind of thinking that with Ronnie Stanley and the right tackle out also, that perhaps Lamar is forced into even more rushing situations. Like, he's not sitting back there in a clean pocket. Let's get out of there and let's run even more. That said, it's just not a great environment matchup in general. But still, I do like Lamar Jackson in tournaments. How do you feel about him with both of his tackles now on the sideline?
Yeah, it's actually the left tackle Ronnie Stanley and the right guard Tyre Phillips, who has been filling in for Marshall Yanda. Not that the point remains the same, that they're missing two offensive linemen against a really solid Colts defensive front that obviously has been upgraded by the addition of DeForest Buckner during the offseason. The total isn't super high. I just like the idea of kind of buying the Ravens on a low. I think that this extends to season-long leagues. Their bye is out of the way. I think they're going to finish strong offensively, and you're getting them on a low. Like Mark Andrews, this has got to be the lowest he's been priced all year. Marquise Brown is a squeaky wheel candidate. They're playing indoors here, and I think that, from a sports betting standpoint, I think that the Ravens covering 1 point against Indianapolis is an absolute smash. Yeah, I mean, I'm building, 10 GPP lineups, and I'm definitely going to have a Ravens team stack in there in at least one.
Yeah. And, DraftKings finally lowered Mark Andrews' price, as Evan alluded to. They have not come down on Marquise Brown at all. On FanDuel, obviously, Marquise Brown has been super cheap for most of the year. But yeah, I think Lamar rushing excites me in this spot. Okay, let's talk about Kyler for a second, because Kyler's been so good. This Miami team is a massive run funnel. I mean, they've been lights out against perimeter wide receivers. And so I think I think people are onto that, and you're going to catch way lower ownership on DeAndre Hopkins and on Kyler. I just ran a new ownership projection, and I lowered Kyler a bunch because he costs more than Russ on DraftKings, And so Kyler 7,800 would be a pay up to be a bit contrarian here. I know that Miami, where you have a lot of respect for Miami's defense here, Evan, what do you think about Kyler and winning in this spot against the Dolphins?
I think that Kyler has just been such a high floor play because of how dominant rusher he has been, that he's a high floor. I think you treat him as a high floor guy every single week. The question is this going to be a game where he can put it all together? His passing and his rushing, as he was obviously able to do against Seattle in their last game. Can he do that against Miami? I would lean toward no, because of how the Dolphins have been able to generate pressure, and in combination with their elite secondary play. But I think at the end of the day, Kyler's going to be fine. I think that, obviously you stack him with DeAndre Hopkins. Is DeAndre Hopkins going to have one of these monster games that he typically has this year? That I guess would become the question when you play him in tournaments from a stack standpoint. I think that, and we'll get to Chase Edmonds, but obviously Chase Edmonds has the clear-cut best matchup among the Arizona skill position players.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, this pay up to be contrarian stuff, Wiggins, I think, and I don't think paying up for Patrick Mahomes is going to be contrarian after he was what you needed last week, but he's 8,100. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is 1K more than Deshaun Watson, 1,100 more than Josh Allen, at least on DraftKings, 1,200 more than Lamar Jackson on DraftKings. Talk about how the expensive guys fit in on FanDuel, where Mahomes is 9,300 on FanDuel. Also, I mean, he's more expensive than Russ. At least on FanDuel, Kyler is less than Russ.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty similar story at quarterback on both the sites this week. You're looking at those top three guys. They're good plays on both sites and are going to catch a ton of ownership. And then really anyone outside them, I wouldn't be too worried about how much ownership they're going to catch because I think they'll all be pretty good plays. I know Mahomes got there last week. I wonder if people will go back to that again this week. I kind of think no, because his price is up more now. And it's just like people thought it was sneaky last week. And he ended up having okay ownership, but I don't know, man. I could see him coming at like 8% and he's fine. But I mean, all the guys there are now priced up a little bit more because they all went off last week. So you can go back to that. I wouldn't sweat the ownership there. As far as other guys on FanDuel, I think Herbert he's an okay play. I mean, his price is kind of getting up there, but they threw the ball a lot last week. And gosh, he's just been so good. And then the other guy on DraftKings that I'm curious what Evan thinks about is Drew Lock. And, he's projecting okay. And I think the game environment's good. But all we hear is Leone telling us how bad this guy is at football.
Yeah. Leone has given us the Drew Lock, Daniel Jones comps where a guy can't throw a touchdown pass, et cetera, et cetera. I did want to mention one thing before we get to that, though. You'll notice that the first six guys that I brought up, Mahomes, Kyler, Russ, Watson, Josh Allen, Lamar, all are dual threat, all have rushing equity, all have high ceilings in the pass game, two minus Lamar, I guess you could say. And so, when you get on these slates where you have these quarterbacks that can do this with dual threat ability, it's really hard for these guys who are one-dimensional to beat them. So, on my list is Ben Roethlisberger and Ryan and Cousins and Locke. It's just really hard for those guys, I think, to pass all these guys when these guys have such high ceilings. And so I'm a little bit afraid of saving money at quarterback this week, whereas in weeks past where we only had, last week was really only Russ and Mahomes I was really afraid of. And so I was okay with Jimmy G, which turned out to be a disaster. But, this week it's really hard for me to say that one of these one-dimensional guys is going to beat all six of these two-dimensional guys. But anyways, to Drew Lock, Evan. Drew Lock is not as in play on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, he's 5,200. We know Atlanta plays well against the run. We know they have been absolutely dreadful against the pass. Drew Lock has struggled badly. What do you think about this spot for Drew Lock against the Falcons?
Yeah, and even last week when he led come from behind win against the Chargers, he still only threw for 6 yards per pass attempt. I mean, I agree with Leone that Drew Lock probably not the answer for the Broncos. I'm looking at the injury report right now for Tim Patrick because Tim Patrick has been their best perimeter receiver.
I think he's listed questionable. I mean, I think he's going to end up playing, but he was limited all week.
He started practicing early in the week. He was limited all week. It looks like he's likelier than not to play. I think that's good for them. We've seen Jerry Jeudy come on a little bit. Noah Fant looked 100% last week. The Falcons have given up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers, the most fantasy points to tight ends. Playing indoors, I really like the over on Falcons Broncos at 50. And then I think a lot of people are going to play Julio. Mm-hmm. And I think that a sort of contrarian way to incorporate Julio into your lineup is to play Fant plus Lock and then bring it back with Julio. Mm-hmm. Right. So I get it. Drew Lock has had 10 NFL starts and he's been good in fantasy in only 2 of them. Mm-hmm. So it's a long shot, but hey, it's a long shot to win the Million Maker too, right?
Yeah. I mean, one thing about when you play the Falcons, I know it hasn't happened really that much this year, but they are going to throw and they want to throw so much, and their ability to stop the run and force other teams to throw can create games with a ton of plays and a ton of pass attempts. And on DraftKings specifically, where completions are worth so much in full PPR, I think that game stacks there are at least in play. What else? Do you want to talk about the Detroit game? We don't know. We're projecting Matthew Stafford in right now. His wife says that he has had 2 negative tests. If he gets another negative test, I believe on Saturday, he'll be cleared Saturday night / Sunday. And so then we can get into a spot where 2 really, really bad defenses with Detroit and Minnesota. So I think that a lot of the Minnesota Detroit stuff is interesting. And I think it will come with depressed ownership because people are making their lineups today. Tomorrow, they're going to be like, I don't know if Matthew Stafford's playing. I can't play a lot of the guys in this game. But I think that the spot is interesting for a lot of guys in this spot. What do you think about Cousins and Stafford if he plays Wiggins?
Well, nobody's going to play Stafford at all. I mean, he might be 1%, but the big problem with Stafford is that Galladay's not playing. And so, Marvin Jones looks a little cooked out there to me. And you got Danny Amendola and Marvin Hall. Like, these guys are not inspiring a lot of confidence. I think Hawkinson is an interesting tournament play. I mean, I don't know what this guy has to do to get his price down to a playable range, but that means nobody is going to play him in tournaments. So he's the guy I'd pair with Stafford, or I would like to pair the most with Stafford. But I just worry that game, it just, I think Minnesota's going to win it. I think they're going to want to run the ball, control the clock. It just doesn't seem like a great spot to attack, but the ownership will be good. And all the receivers on Detroit, they all project okay. I wish they were all a few $100s cheaper, but somebody will probably have a good game.
Yeah. What do you think?